This is the top 30 most powerful One Piece characters in 2025, as far as the anime goes. So this is what it is. No manga, feats. All right, no manga. All right. This is also, excluding Seraphim, Gorosei members, Holy Knight members, Rocks Pirates, Roger Pirates, Kaido and Big Mom, who are already dead. Any dead characters like Ace is not involved. So, that being said, we got number 30, right? Who's at 30? I got Rob Lucci. He comes back into the story at Egghead. He fights against Luffy. This was a one-sided battle. But he didn't, die during the fight, so I had to give him some credit. His durability went up because guess what? He had an awakening. So he became even more animalistic than he already was. And it was basically true because, Luffy was winning that fight and he was getting upset. And he was like, kind of like just going berserk like a wild animal. So he has that going for him. And like I said, his durability was there too. He got a little boost from it, but nothing like Luffy. He thought he could. He's like, I want to see what that wanted poster for him looks like. I want to see what that is. And then defeating Kaido, and he's just in disbelief because he fought him before and they were close, but that fight was not. But even with that, he was fighting Zoro. Now Zoro was suppressed. Remember, I do know that. I'm not no fool. I know Zoro was holding back during that fight. He was using probably 75% of his power to fight in that battle against Rob Lucci. But the fact that he even pushed Zoro to that is that's something. So I got him at number 30. I got 29. I got Kuma, Kuma over Lucci, because Kuma's been through a lot and is backstory and all that shit, right? He's sending people, he's sending himself other places. He can send, he can take the pain out of you with this pawpaw fruit. Boom. Then he can put it inside of other people, or he can send it inside of himself. He did that when he was younger, and then he forced Zoro to do that to so he would leave Luffy the fuck alone when he was one of the 7 warlords. But he, came to Egghead to save his daughter, from certain doom. He hit Saturn in the face. I don't know where the anime is at, I'll be honest, but I know it's close, So that is something Kuma does. Kuma is an armament user too. Boom, his armament hockey is pretty damn good. He has a good durability factor too. No, he don't have no, he has Paramecido fruit, not a Zoandel fruit. He's of the Buccaneer lineage. That's why he was a slave. Because his people were just strong, sturdy people. But then he got away from that, and then he became that again to save his daughter. But Kuma, our guy, is at 29. And 28, I got Shiryu of the Rain. Shiryu of the Rain was, we know he was impelled down manager. But then he was killing people in the prison. And then, Magellan was like, hey, man, you gotta calm down. You can't be running around killing people. Keep them in the jail cells, but you can't kill them. Then they put him in a jail cell. Then Blackbeard came, and he was like, okay, I'll join your crew. When that happened, and that's the thing about Shiryu, we don't know what his blade is. We don't. Some people think it's just some crappy-ass blade, but I think it might be a Supreme grade blade or one of the greater blades. Not a Supreme grade, but one below it, the, greater swords, greater grade swords. But he also acquired the clear fruit from Absalom, one of Moria's, one of Moria's boys. He acquired that, and he even landed a hit on Garp, which is, kind of a feat because it's a Garp, Now he did, and he survived a hit from Garp too. He got back up and he was like, we have to take this guy down. So I got him at 28. He's probably still growing in strength a little bit. Don't know. But 27, I got Jinbei. First son of the sea, Jinbei. Jinbei is a fish man. The best fish man in One Piece. Listen, y'all, the best fish man in One Piece. There's nobody else better than Jinbei. Strength-wise, as far as being a fish man goes, even better than Fisher Tiger. Porty Jones on steroids, he can still beat him. Jinbei has Fishman Karate, Fishman Jujutsu, Fishman Kumite. Yeah, Fishman Kung Fu. He knows how to swim in water. He can create whirlpools. He can stop whirlpools. He can, he's the helmsman for the Straw Hats now. He tanked attacks, or he stood on business against Akainu, to block an attack from Akainu. Now he's an armament user too. He used Ryo Haki on Who's Who. He really put the fucking work. Like low to mid diff this guy. I'll say low diff. And Who's Who was like one of the Toby Ropos. One of those performers. So that's 27, and at 26 I got King the Wildfire. I got him at number 26. People got King close to Katakuri, and what helps him with that is his flames on his back. But once that shit goes out, y'all, he's like no different than another commander. As far as like his durability, but like it is still there. I ain't saying it's not, and that's Lunarian DNA factor, right? They have that, the flame on their back with the black wings, darker skin, and he was like the last of his people. Zoro fought against King. Zoro had to learn about this during the fight, but once he figured it out, he had him beat. That was I ain't gonna lie, that was an extreme diff battle for Zoro. But had he known going into it, it probably would have been a high diff fight. Maybe even mid diff, if he knew that key information about King's Lunarian DNA. But I'll say high diff, but it was an extreme diff battle he went into with Zoro. Zoro, who was inexperienced in hockey, not hockey, but conquers hockey. So King the Wildfire, who also ate a Del Fruit too, one of the dinosaur Del Fruits, like the Pteranodon or some shit like that. I have Marco the Phoenix at 25. Yes, I'm not keeping Marco the Phoenix off of here, y'all. He's one of those guys. he held back King and Queen. But first, let's go back. Let's rewind. Why we like Marco the Phoenix here? He pulled up to Marineford and he blocked an attack from Kizaru. Whitebeard was like, "God damn, it's too bright," and then he stepped in and he blocked that attack. Sent him to sit down real quick. Then they had to put sea prison cuffs on Marco so they could shoot, so Kizaru could get a shot off, and that's how he injured Marco. But even then, Marco got out of the cuffs and then he blocked an Akainu attack to help Luffy escape. Then he listened to his captain. His captain was like, protect Luffy, no matter what. Then he shows up in Wano years later and he's like, hey, I'm following my captain's orders. I have to, make sure you're all right. Then he helped everybody out on the performance floor fighting against Queen. And then that's when he, grabbed King and Queen and threw them away. And he was like, I could stay here and fight you guys and all that, but, I'll let these guys step in instead. Zoro and Sanji. And that's when he stepped aside and let them do their thing. And then he was helping Chopper suppress the ice only virus that was affecting all of them. Like it was like basically keeping it at bay for a little bit because his flame is like healing. It has a recoup factor on it. So it was cool like that. Then he went and he was like, with Shanks for a little bit, and then he was like just going back to Whitebeard's hometown to like, watch over it and everything else. But that is Marco the Phoenix at 25. And at 24, I have Enel. Yes, I still have him on the list. If this guy came back into the series, he would still be a problem for a lot of people. It was said by a lot of people that this guy would have a bounty of, and just off of being like that, with this Devil Fruit alone, 500 million. And that's just him having a Devil Fruit being there. And then, they know about Mantra, which is observation hockey. He comes back, he has armament hockey too. He's still a problem. But Luffy wouldn't have no issues with him. Well, we ain't talking about Luffy and him. That we know that's a low diff, no diff fight for Luffy specifically. But anybody else, below him, they would be, kind of having fucking issues with Enel. Even a little bit of people above him would, kind of, be in close battle with him. We're talking like high diff fights with Enel. Like I said, the Rumble fruit, and he has Mantra, which is, observation hockey. So at 23, I have Sanji, Blackfoot Sanji. He's, always been the third most powerful. He still is, even with Jinbei there. Like I said, Jinbei's, beneath him, right? I got him at 27 and him at 23. Those three people I have above Jinbei, but below Sanji. I think Sanji can beat these people. For one, I think Sanji's durability is, not quite on King's level, but it's like very close. Marco, he could probably defeat Marco. Marco has good regen and everything else, but like I think Sanji could figure something out for him. Same for Enel. Enel might be quicker, but I think his observation hockey, Sanji's observation hockey wins that fight. He has better observation hockey than even Luffy, in Wano. Luffy and Wano, that is. And especially when it comes to the females. If he hears a female in distress, he's like on that shit. Sanji has Ifrit Janbei now, and I know, and it's coming in the anime, y'all. I shouldn't, say too much, but Sanji does some things in Egghead too. Ooh. So, he has a feat against an admiral, we'll say that. And that's at 23. We got Sanji at 23. But at 22, I still have Doflamingo over him. And, like, it's close, y'all, like, between him and Sanji. What I give to Doflamingo is, see, he has the Awakened Devil Fruit, right? Sanji could, like, moonwalk, bypass, shit like that. Kick those, like, strings away and everything else. But at the same time, I'm like, Dofi has, like, years of experience using that Devil Fruit. And not just that, he's a conqueror, too. I wasn't going to sleep on that. Everybody below him is not a conqueror. But he's the first one on the list. So I got him. He pushed Luffy to use Gear 4, which he wasn't trying to use. He really wasn't. But then he was like, you just won't fucking stop. So I have to, like, pull this out and use it on you. He was the first opponent after the time skip to make Luffy be serious about shit. And, Impel breakdown or break out of Impel down, that could happen in the future. And if that does happen, he's definitely getting out of there. Now, I don't know how he'll play, what role he'll play in the future, but if he does get out, that's what it'll still be a problem for some people. Whoever has to fight, it's going to be a problem for him. And I got him at 22. At 21, I got Katakuri. Now, Katakuri and Doflamingo, right? Both have Conqueror's Haki, but, Katakuri is the vice captain, essentially, of the Big Mom Pirates. Maybe even the, you know, captain at this point because his mom's dead. So he'll have to take over the family or whatever. Since nobody's, powerful enough to, like, surpass him or anything else, he's, like, the most powerful. He's the next in line. So, and he has his mochi dough fruit, which he, like, tricks people into making it think it's a Logia type because he has great observation hockey. He's one of the best observation hockey users in the series. His armament hockey is nothing to, sneeze at either. Conqueror's hockey user. He has all three hockey types. Better than Doflamingo and a Del Fruit Awakening as well. Just like Dofi, but slightly better than it, a bit. And I got him at 21. Now I got Eustace Kid at number 20. He is a character that people hate. I don't hate him, but I also know he ain't the best, Maybe I shouldn't have put him above all those other characters, but I don't think so. Because guess what? He's a conqueror too. I don't sleep on conquerors. This guy, it's like if he was smarter, he would be a little bit better than what he is. Better than what he is. He would be closer to Trafalgar Law. Even beating him too because he's a conqueror. But he just like jumps in, doesn't think about anything. Oh, I need to fight this guy to get by. He runs up on Big Mom Pirate. He runs up on Shanks. He runs up on Kaido, and he loses. He runs up on Shanks and like definitely loses. We saw that. But that's the thing. That would have happened to Law. Well, it wouldn't have happened to Luffy, but it would have happened to Law. It would have happened to anybody below him on the list. Definitely, they would have been one shot by him too. They would have been fucked up. It ain't a useless kid thing. It's just a, it was just a bad day for him. Like not more than a bad day, really bad. But he defeated Big Mom with the help of Trafalgar Law, and he was the one who put her into the lava with the railgun. He did that. That's why his bounty went to 3 billion. His devil fruit is decent too. He was figuring it out. But we don't know if he'll come back in the series or not. But I got him at number 20, and at 19 I got Boa Hancock. Boa Hancock is a user of the love fruit. She can make you turn to stone if you fall in love with her looks. Easy. Then she's a conqueror as well. She has conqueror's hockey. That's why she fell in love with Luffy because Luffy's conqueror's hockey was actually more powerful than hers. She had vice admirals, at their knees and shit. This girl was not playing games. One of the 7 warlords she was at Marineford. She helped Luffy out there. She even gave Luffy some clothes during the time skip and some food. When he was training with Rayleigh. Then she, shows up later, with a higher bounty because she had a frozen bounty of I think 80 million or some shit. But then it went up to 1 point something billion. They had the Marines there and Blackbeard was there for her devil fruit, knowing about it and everything else. Had Blackbeard not had the Yami no Mi, things would have been different. She actually could have handled that situation. Probably, but he has the Yami no Mi, not just that, the Quake fruit too, so she had no chance against that, but I still think she could beat everybody below her with the things she has and everything else. And at 18, I got the other girl with Conqueror's Hockey, Yamato, the daughter of Kaido. She thinks she's Kojuki Oden. She just really, believes in his ideas about, freedom and opening the land of Wano and the people being free again and not under Kaido's tyranny. She was, running around with chains on. Luffy broke the chains off. It reminded her of Ace. She knew about Ace. She fought against Kaido too. She matched his Thunder Bagua. You know, his was slightly better than hers, but she was able to, you know, stave that shit off. She has Conqueror's Haki. She has Armament Haki. She has a little bit of Observation Haki, too. You know, she has a Devil Fruit, mythical Zoan Devil Fruit. You know, she's nobody to, like, dismiss. That's all I'm saying. You know, she could have easily became a Straw Hat, too. But she decided to stay in Wano and protect Momonosuke and, like, help him learn his Devil Fruit. You know, she's probably a great teacher for Momonosuke, and I really think they could be a thing. But she is still an alliance member. If Luffy ever needed help, her and Momonosuke would be there for him, for Luffy. And I got her at 18. I got Trafalgar Law at 17. He was with Luffy for a long time. He was at Punk Hazard. He had to fight to get his heart back from Virgo. Virgo was easy when he no-diffed him after he got his heart back. Dressrosa came. Doflamingo was hunting his dick. Fujitora was hunting his dick, and he still survived all that. You know, he helped Luffy out during the Doflamingo fight at the beginning, but he lost his arm, so he had to sit the fuck down. Then he went to Zo, and then he went to Wano. And when he went to Wano, he helped, you know, gather together the coalition against Kaido. Then he went up to the rooftop and fought against Kaido and Big Mom. You know, he knocked Big Mom off the island with the help of Kid and the rest of them. Then she, you know, got saved by Prometheus and everything else. And then, you know, he was attacking Kaido a little bit. Then he went down with Zoro, who actually scarred Kaido. And he was like, you know, take care of Zoro. You know, he needs some help. He then proceeds to go fight Big Mom. And he fights Big Mom. He damages her from the inside with his Awakened Devil Fruit. K-Room and Radio Knife and Puncher Willie and all those moves those grand moves he used to, you know, pin her down too. So then Kid could come in and hit her with the railgun, defeating her. Then he went to fight Blackbeard, you know, and he didn't win that fight, but he survived because of Beppo. So I think Law will still be a part of the series and everything, you know, and he'll be a great, you know, he still rides for Luffy and shit a little bit. That's what I know. But at 16, I got Admiral Aramaki. You know, he showed up in Wano real quick after everything was said and done with Kaido. He was like, I want to see what this boy can do. You know, and I think I can catch this guy since he's young and everything else. You know, he's an upstart. He's a new Yonko. Let me prove to the Navy that I'm actually, you know, useful and everything else. He handled King and Queen, who were at like probably 50% of their like max, but he did it like low diff. You know, he sucked away their energy, their life force. He became trees, and then, you know, Momonosuke and the Skybirds came, and he was like, you know, gonna handle them. You know, he was gonna, you know, defeat them, and then Shanks showed up and was like, hey, yo, stop fucking with them. Let's go back to HQ and do what you do. But then he was in Marijua, and he was trying to stop the slave revolt, or, you know, the revolutionaries and the slave revolt that was going on. Fujitora, you know, was like standing there, you know, helping the slaves out a little bit. And he was like, why would you go against your job? He's like, because I, you know, feel like it. You know, I don't feel like following what you're doing. Not right now. But Aramaki's at 16 with his devil fruit called the Woodwoods fruit. He can become like the trees and everything else. You know, he can zap away people's life force, basically. And he doesn't need to eat either. Number 15 is Fujitora. Admiral Fujitora is eater of the gravity fruit, I believe it's called. Zushi no Mi. And in Dressrosa, that's when he first showed up. He sent down a meteor. You know, Doflamingo and Law had to, you know, save themselves from it. Then he dropped another meteor down. The bird cage, you know, sliced it. He was fighting against Sabo, who was basically, you know, on par with him, if you ask me. You know, growing in power during the fight. Now, he was suppressed too, but, you know, their fight was, you know, kind of good. But it was like a stalemate, and they had to, like, you know, stop the bird cage and everything else. You know, Then he was at, Marijua, and he was, like I said, helping the slaves out and everything else. If it broke out between him and Aramaki, I think he would beat Aramaki. He's a better swordsman too, and he has great observation haki. Low key, I think he has one of the best observation haki in the whole series. And that's Fujitora, Admiral Fujitora at 14, and at 15. At 14, I have Sengoku the Buddha. Sengoku, even though he's older and everything else, was the fleet admiral. He has the human fruit model Daibutsu. He was at Marineford. He had to intervene. They were like, oh shit, Fleet Admiral Sengoku has to step in. It was after Blackbeard ate the devil fruit. He knew that the admirals were kind of getting tired and he had to step forward. And then he hit shockwaves on the whole Blackbeard pirates. They got fucked up. Then Blackbeard, hit the tremor fruit, and he was like tied with it. And you saw what Garp did, right? I think that Sengoku's the same. And rumors that he has Conqueror's Haki too. That's why he was kind of like, not rivals, but like, on par with Garp back in the day. Not just his devil fruit, but, Haki's, pretty damn proficient. But he's older now, so I got him at 14. At 13, I got Silver's Rayleigh, right-hand man of Gold Roger. Back in his prime, he was like definitely, fucking people up. Even people I have above him right now in his prime, but in his old age, I got him at 13. He went toe-to-toe with Kizaru. He was like, damn, if I wasn't old, I could probably beat you. But right now, we're kind of like on par with one another. He was buying them some time trying to. Then he, taught Luffy, armament haki, observation haki, and then Conqueror's haki. His Conqueror's haki is ridiculous still. He, tricked Blackbeard basically. He was like, yo, you need to get the fuck out of here. He came to save Bo Hancock from, getting her devil fruit snatched by Blackbeard. Blackbeard was like, he backed off because of the showcase of haki. And then he was like, I don't know if I would have won if he actually wanted to stay here and fight, He said shit like that. So I'm like, Rayleigh's still great. He's in the top 15 still, as far as, what I see in the anime and everything else. But that's Rayleigh, the Dark King. Great. He's great at all hockeys. Observation haki, Conqueror's haki, armament haki. He's good at all of that. And he's a swordsman too. But Zoro, I got Zoro above him. Zoro's just growing in power and shit. He's just gonna, keep soaring from here on out. He has to be powerful enough to beat Mihawk. Once his Conqueror's haki, grows to certain degrees, I believe he'll be enough. It's almost there, but it ain't quite there yet. And everybody beneath him, he would probably have a problem with beating. But he could win. Definitely has win conditions there, I think. That Rayleigh one's extreme diff, but he still wins, I think. Because Zoro is just a dog like that. He has great endurance. We've seen time and time again, he's on the brink of death, but he still pushes through to win the fight. And that's why I got him at number 12. And he defeated King. He was holding it back against Rob Lucci. See, once Zoro does some other shit in the manga or other things, people will, have the same respect I have for Zoro as far as his power goes. But at 11, I got Monkey D. Garp. Monkey D. Garp at 11. Yes. I was going to have him higher, but then I was like, you know what? He's older. He is like that. We saw what he did. We saw what he did. At Marineford, he punched Marco. He was going to, kill Akainu. He was basically going to put him in the hospital, is what I'm saying. He wouldn't kill Akainu, but he would, definitely put him in the hospital. Definitely do that. But when he went to Hachinosu, Galaxy Divide, Galaxy Impact, that shit was ridiculous. I don't know. I knew that, but like, damn, that's what that is. And then in his prime, he would be even better than that, but old man Garp's at 11. Armament Hockey, the best armament hockey user in the whole series. Like, even over Luffy and shit. That's a fact. Maybe Dragon has something in store for us, but, that hasn't been seen yet. So, we'll see. And Luffy can surpass his grandpa, too. But right now, I think it's Garp who has the best armament hockey in the whole series. Even over Mihawk, too, yes. That's why he's called Garp the Fist, Garp the Hero. He fought against rocks at God Valley, He fought against Blackbeard pirates. His mission was to save Kobe. He did what he had to do, but then he got caught in the process. So, like, that's why he's at 11. Number 10, I got Flame Emperor Sabo. Yes, I gave him some gas. Like, maybe too much is what some people might say, but I don't think so. Because he's on par with Fujitora, right? Then he's, running into Marijois afterwards to save, Kuma. And, like, also see other things. Things he wasn't supposed to see. Shit like Imu on the throne. And the Goro say heeding calls to him. Or Imu, which is a female, is what people assume. But guess what? Sabo is Flame user. He inherited Ace's will. He was trained by Dragon, and he's like chief of staff of the Revolutionary Army. He survived the onslaught of all 5 Gorosei in a room that was dark, and he was like worried about Cobra too. So he got hit, but like he was like, I have to get out of here. I could stay and try to fight, but I understand that, that is like demonic powers and shit that I've never seen before. But like he stood there in front of the 10 Gorosei. That's the first time we've seen like somebody do shit like that to the Elder Stars, and he stood like there, and like when they went into their fucking transformations and shit, it happens, but like he was the first one to stand on that shit, and then go back to where Dragon was in Kamabaka Kingdom and let him know everything that happened in Marijois, as chief of staff of the Revolutionary Army, and his bounty's higher too because I think he killed Cobra. So Sabo, and I think he could fight against Akainu too, where he may win or lose, either way, but I got Sabo at number 10. At number 9, I got Kizaru. I always give respect to the OG admirals. He pulled up on Egghead with Saint Saturn. He was holding back. Some people are like, Luffy versus him, he was holding back. But, even so, Luffy was going to win that fight, even if he wasn't holding back. Kizaru is the light or glint fruit user. He shoots beam of light. He moves at the speed of light. He's the fastest One Piece character, without Haki being considered to like slow people down and everything else. Like I know. Conqueror's Haki is used to slow down Delphi users, like trick them into thinking they're weaker. That's hence why it's Conqueror's Haki. That's why it looks like some Conqueror users are faster than Kizaru, but they ain't. Not in reality. They trick them because they have the Conqueror's Haki. And they're like, it stops him. Luffy ran up on Kizaru in base form and like said, we ain't the same anymore. He was still trying to fight Luffy though, push Luffy and see if he's actually like that. And they basically knocked each other down. But I give the win to Luffy. But Luffy's a Yonko at this point. So like that's a fucking feat for Kizaru. He fought against Gear 5 Luffy. And he's like one of the admirals too, the OG admirals. I'm like, everybody below him, they could some of them could maybe beat him, but like I'm just like, I give it to Kizaru at number 9. But at number 8, I got Benn Beckman of the Red-Haired Pirates. Now, people say, and rumors say that he's on par with Shanks, but not like on par with him, but like in certain ways he is. Probably at using weapons and guns and like swords and shit like that. He has hockey too. Armament hockey is probably really fucking good with this guy. That's why Kizaru put his hands up at Marineford. Armament bullets with the Rio. That's the shit that he has. Observation hockey is also probably decent with this man. And he can probably use a sword pretty damn well, too. I know the man's resourceful. He turned a gun into a weapon even though he didn't have bullets. He hit some people in the fucking head with the gun, just turned it into like a, club and started like hitting people. And that was when he was young and he was just playing games. He wasn't actually fighting in a fight. I got him at number 8, the right-hand man of Shanks. And at number 7, I got Mihawk. Dracula Mihawk at number 7. He went up 1 spot from where he was last year, I think. Or maybe 3 spots. I gotta remember. But he has yet to show his like full power and show like being pressed. Before any of that shit can happen, he like dips. He dodges Shanks at Marineford. He dodges, he don't dodge other swordsmen and shit. He just better than them. And like it just, goes to show that he is the most powerful swordsman in the world. But what if Shanks or Zoro pulled up on him, in current time? He would be pushed. Let's not get that twisted. Great observation and armament user this guy is. And sword skills are like the best. We don't know his backstory and shit. He's a mystery. He rides around by himself, but he's like confident in his own strength. However, he becomes a part of Cross Guild. So basically, and based off of things and everything else, he's the vice captain of Cross Guild, if you ask me. If I'm looking at the wanted poster and everything, I'm like, okay, yes, this guy is the vice captain of, and he used to go by Marine Hunter before he became one of the 7 Warlords of the Sea. So he's basically going to go back to doing that since he's a part of the Cross Guild now. And he's going to be protecting Buggy and, his own self from Marines who try to hunt his dick, but he's still, a guy. So I got him at number 7. And then at number 6, I got Aokiji from, former admiral to Blackbeard pirate. He fought against, he stopped Doflamingo after the time skip. First, he fought against Akainu and created the environment of Punk Hazard, half hot, half cold. The cold part was all his doing. And he gave Akainu some scars to remember him by. By all means, Aokiji should have lost, and he did. He lost his leg that day, too. Then he became a Blackbeard pirate. Then he fought against some Big Mom pirates, too. Then he also to kidnap Pudding. And then he fought against Garp. And he was holding back. He's like, I shouldn't hold back against you, Garp. You were my teacher and everything else. It was an emotional fight for him. He didn't want to have to fight Garp. He really didn't. But he knew he had to. He might still be good or whatever. That's what people believe. I wouldn't be surprised if he was. But he did, end up defeating Garp, with the help of, Shiryu a little bit. But, like, his help was, like, minuscule because he was fighting against Garp mostly. They were like, oh, fuck, this is Garp, he's, fucking our ship. But then when Aokiji showed up, they're like, oh, shit, we got Aokiji on our side. He's gonna he's gonna run shit with the old man real quick. And he was, man. He has great armament hockey, observation hockey, it's great. I got him at number 6. At number 5, I have, and this is the top 5, like I was saying on TikTok, I got Akainu at number 5, the current fleet admiral of the Marines. Now, he had to fight against Aokiji to get that, and Aokiji pushed him pretty damn hard, and he got scarred from it, but he ended up getting the position anyway. He pushed his papers behind a desk, but his anger is just boiling right now with all the shit going on. Luffy becoming more powerful, knowing that Luffy could have been defeated by him at Marineford, knowing that Ace's devil fruit's being used by a revolutionary in the Revolutionary Army, knowing that Dragon's still out there. All of this is like making him like pissed the fuck off. Like the next time he fights, he's gonna like be in a real fight with somebody, and like either it's gonna be an extreme battle too. I think, you know, he may win that fight too. He still may win. You know, this guy is a tank like that. He's durable, strong. He went up against Whitebeard, not afraid. You know, he's the one who put both those holes in his chest. Oh shit, man. This nigga's not playing games at all. You know, I got him at number 5. You know, overall. You know, Magna fruit, right? The most offensive devil fruit of all the devil fruits in One Piece, said by Oda himself. You know, so that shit's cool. You know, I got him at number 5. Blackbeard, I got at number 4. You know, Blackbeard could probably, you know, figure out Akainu. Akainu would put, you know, Blackbeard through the fucking, you know, ringer. He would be like, oh, fuck. But, like, he would come out with burns and all kind of shit. But I think Blackbeard could still win that shit. You know, Yami no Mi to cancel out the devil fruit. You know, he's also, you know, very knowledgeable on devil fruits, too. He defeated Law. He defeated, you know, Gecko Moria. You know, he has Whitebeard's Quake fruit. He has the Dark fruit, and he has a lineage factor of somebody we all know now. But we ain't saying that on our channel, you know. He's just a guy who has a great, you know, middle name. We'll say that. The Will of D is, like, strong with this person. Like, on no bullshit. You know, it's powerful. You know, that's why he's in the position he's in. You know, and people are like, fat fuck Blackbeard. The guy who has, you know, like real pirate looks, ugly ass guy, you know, sneaky, you know, rat ass kind of guy. He's still out here doing shit. Yes, he is. And he still will be until he fights against Luffy. Then that's when it shit, you know, ends. But, like, I still think that Luffy has something for Blackbeard. That's why I got him at number 3. Monkey D. Luffy, our main character. This guy. I got him at number 3 over Blackbeard. Because Gear 5 Toon Force is just like, he's still learning the ins and outs of that. And Conqueror's Haki can go even further than what it is right now. You know, pretty soon Luffy might be the most powerful in the series. You know, he fought against Kizaru on Egghead. He fought against Lucci on Egghead, some Seraphim too. You know, he was fighting against Kaido, King of the Beasts, a guy who's a tank, even better tank than Whitebeard. You know, his durability, you know, rivals that of prime Whitebeard, you know, Kaido. And Luffy was fighting against this guy by himself. You know, he had some help at the beginning, but he fought him. It was mostly Luffy fighting against him. And his Conqueror's Haki bloomed during that fight. Armament Haki bloomed, and then his Devil Fruit bloomed to Gear 5. You know, he can turn his environment to rubber. You know, he can do ridiculousness. You know, just ridiculous shit. You know, turning people into jump ropes, you know, turning them into rubber too. But, like, they still feel the pain and everything. It ain't like they ain't feeling any type of pain. They're like, whoa, what the fuck's going on? And then the pain's there too. It ain't like he's not, you know, feeling anything. Now, he's not, Luffy ain't. Not until he powers down. But, like, as he goes through the series and he keeps going, he's going to just become more efficient at using this Devil Fruit, y'all. And his Conqueror's Haki is going to be there, too. You know, right now, I got him at number 3. Number 2, I got Monkey D. Dragon. I shouldn't gas him up this much, but I am. Because he's Luffy's father. And he hasn't shown anything since Logtown. He saved his son at Logtown. You know. And he appeared and disappeared. He had a Devil Fruit. I believe he's good at armament usage, like his father, Garp, and his son, Luffy. I believe that Monkey D. Dragon is also a great, you know, he's a great armament user, but he's also an observation user, too. And devil fruit usage is like very proficient. Whatever devil fruit he has is great. Rain fruit, storm fruit, typhoon fruit, like some other mythical type of beast. We don't know, but whenever it comes, ooh boy, we'll be like cool as One Piece fans for that. I think he is a little more powerful than Luffy right now. But the number one is obviously right here, Shanks. You know, excluding Emo and the Gorosei and all those people, right? Based off of everything we've seen, he had, first he was born in a chest, well, not born in a chest, son of Saint Frigolin Garland, found in a chest by Roger, raised up by Roger, given the straw hat. He fought against Mihawk, and then acquired a bounty of 1 billion. Then he found Luffy, gave Luffy the Devil Fruit because Luffy was, a curious kid and found the Devil Fruit. He was trying to give it to Ace, but then he gave it to Luffy instead. He then went around. Well, he got his arm chopped off too. Then he went around and became a better Yonko than he already was. He went to Marineford and stopped the war. He stopped Akainu with a single, sword, pulling out his sword and being like, you shouldn't do that shit to your subordinates, That's not becoming of a Navy admiral, trying to kill your own guys like that, Then he goes and he defeats Eustace Kid with one swing. Divine departure, just like Gold Roger. And damn, I don't know if it was more powerful, but definitely the energy in that blade was more focused when Shanks used it because he has one arm. He has to really charge that bitch up and then just ooh, he fucked them up. Then he had clashes with Whitebeard and Kaido. Stopping Kaido from going to Marineford. And it's just a matter of time before he fights Luffy. Not on some I hate you type shit, but on I need to test you, Luffy. Are you actually like that? I know you've done this, I know you've done that, but I'm here too. What if I want to just stand in your way and say, you can't have One Piece? What then, Luffy? Are you going to do something? That's the type of shit that Shanks is going to do to Luffy. But that'll be a good fight waiting to happen. Or maybe he might die beforehand, but that's, Gorosei members and the shit they do, right? They fuck around with other shit, I excluded them from this list, but next year, I'll probably have them on the list. This time next year, I'll get another, top 30 out. But that's what it is, y'all. I'll go through it one more time for you, real quick. I got 30, I got Rob Lucci. 29, I got Kuma. 28, I have Shiryu. 27, I have Jinbei. 26, I got King. 25, I got Marco. 24, I got Enel. 23, I got Sanji. 22, I got Doflamingo. 21, I got Katakuri. 20, I got Kid. 19, I got Boa. 18, I got Yamato. 17, I got Law. 16, I got Aramaki. 15, I got Fujitora. And 14, I got Sengoku. At 13, I got Rayleigh. And at 12, I got Zoro. At 11, I got Garp. And in top 10, I got Sabo. At 9, I got Kizaru. At 8, I got Benn Beckman. At 7, I got Mihawk. At 6, I got Aokiji. At 5, I got Akainu. At 4, I got Blackbeard. And at 3, I got main character Luffy. At 2, I got Dragon. And at 1, I got red-haired Shanks. And that is the top 30 most powerful One Piece characters of 2025. That's the anime. No manga feats too much, man. These episodes I was talking about for some characters and come soon. But and then Elbath is on the way. I said, cool. And next year I'll have another one, and these things will definitely be switched by then, because the way things are cooking in the manga and what I hear, things are developing kind of faster than in the past. So be cool on the corner and watch this video too. It's long, but watch it. You know the Green Angel loves some One Piece.